Welcome to the Impact Room, brought to you by Douglas Jackson, who help you hire more impactful, diverse leaders who stay for longer and are more successful. The Impact Room is a business, CX and leadership podcast where exceptional, diverse and impactful leadership and wisdom is shared. We dive deep into pressing topics that impact your customer-led business, featuring interviews with CEOs, COOs, Chief Customer, Chief People Officers, directors, influential leaders and subject matter experts who share their lived experiences, top tips, thoughts, advice and industry trends to help elevate existing and future talent. So let's dive into our next episode, and please don't forget to like, subscribe or share if you enjoy this content. Thank you. Great. So hello, I'm Michelle Ansell, Managing Partner of Douglas Jackson, and I'm really looking forward to today's Impact Room. I'm joined by Donna Scully, a qualified lawyer, joint owner and director of Carpenters Group, who are the UK market-leading provider of insurance, legal and claims services. Now in their third decade, they are multi-award winning, and Donna has also been recognised and awarded many accolades, including being the first Irish woman to be awarded the Merseyside Businesswoman of the Year. Congrats, Donna. Donna initially caught my attention due to her huge energy and love for life, her commitment to her teams, her customers, but also her charitable and community interests, which includes fans supporting food banks, ambassador, a mentor for the Girls Network, and Donna also runs a breakfast club and at the Charles Thompson Mission every Sunday. She's a passionate advocate of social mobility and has some thoughts and life experiences that we don't often hear about from our leaders, which is why I'm really looking forward to getting into this today. Donna, hello, huge welcome, and thank you again for joining me today.
Thank you for asking me. It's great to be here and to chat to you.
Thank you. Good. So I've tried to do a job there to introduce you. I could have gone on for a long time. So, I mean, for our audience and network, how would you describe yourself?
I suppose in a nutshell, it's self-made, isn't it? I suppose I'm very, very self-made in the sense that I come from a very basic background in Dublin inner city. I left school at 16. I did a secretarial course and I eventually became a secretary from an office junior, which was a huge and a good job for somebody from my background and probably the best job anyone in my family had ever had to that point. And I suppose, so it's that kind of beginning that makes it unusual, I suppose, to where I am now. But I suppose, again, I emigrated to England when I was 20 years old as a secretary, and I went back into a law firm in Newcastle upon Tyne, and then did that for a couple of years. And I suppose where things started to change for me, or where I decided to try and change things, was I was kind of bored being a secretary, and I felt like I was doing a lot for the person I was working for, and I wanted to kind of get to deal with my own clients and stuff. So I decided to study law. And I suppose what I love about the UK for me is that they didn't punish me for the fact that I left school at 16 with just GCSEs. I was allowed to kind of go off. I couldn't do a law degree because I couldn't get funding, but I could do the legal exec course.
Right.
And the other great thing about that is you can keep going at it until you get enough, you know, kind of when you go down the road enough to be able to, it kind of qualifies as a degree. Right. And then you can become a qualified solicitor. So I eventually became a qualified solicitor. So that's, you know, that changed everything for me.
Excellent. Thank you. So, I mean, there's so much that I want to talk to you about and share with our audience if we can. So can we start with, you know, I suppose if we go right back and when you were a child, what three things were you told, do you think, by your parents or school that you would like to challenge?
God, there were more than three things that kind of frustrated and you know, annoyed me in a sense. But you know, because of my age, Ireland was very, very religious when I was young, and I was schooled by nuns, a convent education, and it wasn't a mixed school; it was a girls' only school. It was, I mean, we had religion every day on the agenda. That was one of our subjects, compulsory subjects. So that was very frustrating for me. It was a bit overpowering and a bit old-fashioned, and the nuns, you weren't allowed to question anything. And I'm an inquisitive person by nature. So if you questioned anything, you were difficult. So you hear a lot about women being difficult, don't you? And I was difficult from very early just because I asked questions. And I suppose the other thing that was very frustrating for me, coming from that background and that education, and probably my family background, was that there was no prospects of any career. I mean, you know, they were kind of getting us ready to get married. The only science I did was domestic science, literally cooking, needlework, you know, sewing, knitting, none of which I'm very good at. But, you know, so I think for me, there was no ambition. There was no ability to be inquisitive and to question it. And I wasn't really ever encouraged to think about a career. And I think all of that was very frustrating for me. And I think could have really knocked everything out of me. But thankfully I didn't allow it. And I just felt like there was more. And I suppose moving away from Ireland to England was a bit more progressive. So and it wasn't as religious. So I think that kind of helped me to open my mind and to forget about those things that I was kind of told early on. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't an ambitious beginning for me.
Yeah, it's interesting that is, and that, you know, when we talk about social mobility, and you know, I've shared with you, I think that some of my background, it's not too dissimilar. It wasn't religious, but you know, my mum didn't work. She did some part-time dinner ladying. My dad was a bulldozer driver. You know, as you said, there was very little expectation of me as the girl, you know, other than to go to school and maybe have a job and get married and have children, neither of which I was very drawn to. And I think that's something similar for yourself, isn't it, in terms of motherhood? Can you sort of touch on that as well?
Yeah, I think for me, I didn't think I needed to rush anything. I couldn't understand why my granny was asking me at age 20, because I moved to Newcastle because I met a guy on holiday. And she kept saying, when are you marrying him? You know, at 20. I was like, goodness me. I mean, that was definitely not on my agenda. So clearly I have different DNA and I was just thinking differently. But for me, that was too young. And it was like, why the rush? So I kind of thought, well, you know, what about my life? What about me? What about, you know, who am I and what do I want to achieve? So I just fought against it, really. I just didn't. I mean, and I did eventually get married when I was nearly 40. And even in terms of, I have twin boys who are 24, and I didn't have them until my late 30s either. But I think for me, it just wasn't, I didn't feel maternal at 20, 25. You know, and don't forget, I was kind of studying law from about age 22 to 30. So that wasn't even again on my agenda, because I was like, I want to get qualified as a solicitor. I want to have a career. And then I'll have the family, you know, or I'll think about it. I don't think I was even thinking about it till 30. So
yeah, interesting. And just, I mean, on the work that you do with so many young people, do you get a sense that it is changing, you know, in schools and the way that they're being taught to now? Because I don't necessarily see it changing that much sometimes when I talk to my parents' children, sorry, not my parents' children, my friends' children, or you know, but I mean, there is change. But do you think there's enough?
No, there's definitely not enough. I mean, no way. But I think I love that, you know, I do mentoring for the Girls Network, and I think I love that because it's around the country. It's in quite deprived areas. It's people with fractured backgrounds who they're trying to help, and you are at the most disadvantaged. You know, I come from a fairly fractured background, you know, very basic area, and the opportunities are so little, and your confidence is so low because you don't have any peers. You know, as you say about your mum and your dad, you know, there was no expectation for me. I've kind of against the odds gone and done what I've done. So I don't think there's enough. And I mean, even as a company, we go out to schools in the area and where we have offices, but we don't go to posh schools. In the sense that they have more support, they probably have more ambition there and more peers and things. Whereas, you know, it's when you're sitting in your inner city school. I mean, there was 45 in my class. You know, I'm surprised the nuns even knew all our names. Never mind what we liked or didn't like. So yeah, there isn't enough. But I think things like, you know, mentoring, you know, companies really walking the talk on social mobility. I think all of that's really helpful, and we've just got to keep pushing it. And I really think people like you and me has to be on our agenda, really high on our agenda, because we've been there. And we've experienced it, and we know what it's like. So for me, it's like, and it's one of the reasons I tell my story, because I think when people look at you as you get older and you get a little bit, you're a bit better turned out, and maybe you speak a bit better, and they think, oh my God, she's so posh and she's really successful. And you go, you've no idea where I come from, and I want them to know. But it is that lack of confidence, and just thinking, I think, feeling you're forgotten. And that you don't count. And I think it's that thing of saying you do count. And it's really interesting, because we've got a lot of social mobility at Carpenters, and people who you give a chance to are so grateful for that chance, and they'll work really hard. Because I went to a seminar a few months ago, and people were talking about the risk of social mobility, and I couldn't even understand what they were talking about. I was like, can you explain the risk? And they were going, well, these people, and they might not know how to behave, or they might not, be able to step up to God knows what. But I was like, for goodness sake, that's not my experience. I am the social mobility, kind of poster girl, and I'm so grateful for every opportunity. I've worked really hard, because I know how lucky I am. So I'm not having that social mobility is a risk. I think it's a bonus.
I agree with you, because I think as well, when, as you've said, there's a couple of things that you said earlier, like that inquisitiveness and, that curiousness and that wanting to push the boundaries. I think that is so important and significant in business and business success. And also, I'd be interested in your view. I think for myself, one of my first jobs, my first job actually, that someone did give me the chance, and I got rejected for a whole host of roles when I left school. I laugh about it, but it was in an insurance broker. And I think that because there was one on every high street, it had a very low barrier of entry. And I know in the insurance sector, there is quite a lot of quite diverse talent to some degree. There was a lot of females as well when I joined, which it was great, but they did seem to stop at a certain level of management. And then I also in my career supported the customer service and the contact centre space. And again, I think that had a very low barrier to entry. So it had a good social mobility as well as, diversity with regards to lots of different elements. And obviously I'm born and bred in Birmingham as well. But to your point, I think individuals who don't have it easy, who haven't got those expectations, they want to push against something. Maybe they've got a little bit of an edge. I was for sure. But I think because they try, they've got that resilience, they've got that determination. And again, as well as that curiousness that you talked about, I think those are critical for success in business, Donna.
Absolutely. And I also think, people talk to me about being an empathetic and a kind leader. Listen, I'm tough as well, but I always go tough but fair. But I think one of the reasons that I probably am empathetic is because I've done every job. I mean, I've done every job in the business. I've done all the jobs all the way up, and I know how hard the jobs are, and I know how we need everybody in the business, whether it's the office junior or the cleaner, or everybody is important to make that business work. So I'm not like at the top of the ladder in my ivory tower going, oh God, I'm here. And you're right, because one of my good friends in insurance started in a Swinton local office.
Right, yeah.
And she's now the CEO. And she's done every job. And I just think it's that thing where, it's that, if you give us a chance.
Yeah.
And it's why I'm so keen on opportunity. And I always say to people, look, if you want it, not everybody is curious and wants it. I mean, we have, a kind of a first notification call center. And people come in there, and if they're happy there, they can be there for life. And get do what they want. But then it's a real springboard in our business for everybody to go anywhere they want in the business. So if they want apprenticeships, or they want to go into one of our academies or whatever, once you get in that door at 17 or whatever, with no qualifications, you can do whatever you want. It's up to you. And I think that's what I want, is that opportunity, because when you are that 16-year-old, and you've had no opportunity and you haven't got anybody to see or to help you. And one of the things I also say is, the network is so powerful.
Yeah.
And you don't have it. You know, if your dad's a bulldozer driver,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, my mum, you know, worked in a sewing factory, and her sisters. So, you know, I've known you don't have a network. So I'm really keen that we share our network. You know, women in particular, and anybody who's done well, you know, should really be trying. And I think that's one of the big things about mentoring. I think mentoring is great about confidence and support and finding yourself and your voice, but it's really about the network. You know, when they say to me, I'd like to do this, do you know anybody in this field? You know, yes, I do. So, yeah,
and I agree wholeheartedly. And the job that I do, there's so many, because we ask almost everybody, is there anybody else you know? Is there the amount of times people are so close to that question? It's like they become very fearful, or I daren't give somebody's name, and I think networking's a real art. And I do find that I think men maybe have a little bit better go at it than a lot of some of the females perhaps, but certainly at the lower level, I think, as you say, the more people can get into that mindset of networking and better networking and spreading the word, being confident of doing that, the better, really, because I don't think it comes naturally to a lot of people.
No, I agree.
Yeah. So if we look at the legal profession, I know you've done so much to improve the chances and the likelihood of individuals, you know, in that sector becoming lawyers or working in that space. In another world, they would never have had the chance to do that. I mean, it's a highly skilled vocation. You said yourself, you know, the amount of time that and effort it took you to qualify. And in my mind, it takes a level of commitment, certainly to education, that I'm not sure someone like myself would have considered or gone through. So when you look at roles like this, you know, high skilled functional positions, how can other CEOs and founders attract and develop individuals who might be different to those who came before?
I think the thing I love about Carpenters now, 30 years down, is it's so diverse in terms of the people, but also in terms of the offering, you know, the kind of work that we do. So we have this big insurance services division. We've got the legal division. And I agree with you, you know, like I physically sat 29 exams. I went into an exam hall and turned that page over 29 times to become a solicitor. And I had to go after work. You know, for the last probably 6 years, I had to do it after work in London, which was very difficult. So I'm not saying it's for everybody. And I would always say to people who want to study law, and one of my mentees, the girl I'm mentoring at the moment, was considering law.
Right.
But she's not going to go into law because, you know, I was quite honest with her that it is quite academic and there is a lot of exams and there's a lot of learning. So, you know, and the thing about law, which is kind of a pain in the backside really, is you've got to do loads of law that you're not interested in, like constitutional law and land law and all that. So I had to go through the motions of learning that stuff and doing the exams in it, even though I knew I was going to be a personal injury lawyer from the get-go. So I think you have to be honest. But what I don't want is somebody thinking because they come from a basic background or maybe not a great school and they maybe haven't got great results, that it's not for them. They just haven't been given the opportunity to study, to get, good lecturers and things like that. So for me, you know, I hadn't got a good education when I came into law. I hadn't got, you know, I only had like GCSEs. I think you only needed 4. But I did have the ability to learn. And you're right. I think it'd be wrong of you to say to something. I mean, one of the things I love about our legal apprenticeships is we don't care where you went to school, we don't care what your accent is, and we don't care what your A levels are. But we do care that you want to do law, that you have a love for it, and that you know that you're going to have to do. I mean, a legal apprenticeship is 5 years while you're working. So, you know, there's no point in pretending to someone that it's easy or it's straightforward. But then there's lots of other things you can do, you know, in the business. You know, we have a big HR division, we have, you know, finance and, you know, lots of other things that you can do. You don't have to be a lawyer. But, you know, if you are thinking of that, I would always say, you know, there will be exams and and some of it's quite dry, you know, but yeah, I think honesty is true. And I think saying everyone can be a lawyer is not right.
Yeah.
You know, you're absolutely right. It's, you know, I think there has to be some intellect there and there has to be this ability to study and to learn a lot of information. and to have a problem-solving mind. It is really about problem-solving, whichever area you're in. And that goes without saying that you have to like people. You have to be customer orientated, because you're going to be dealing with people who have legal problems, which can make them quite irrational and stuff like that. But yeah, you're right, and I hadn't really thought about it, but it's true. It is tough. Like, I suppose, accountancy and other areas where I think where exams are concerned, you have to do them and you have to study. No, but
you make an interesting point, and I think this is very valid when we look at younger people. And perhaps, I mean, I think like you a little, I think you were better at school than me from the things that I've seen and read about. But I mean, I'm not saying I'm not a very clever person, but I hated school. So I just didn't do well in school. I wasn't interested in school at all. But I think the apprenticeship route and, finding a passion or a vocation that you're really interested in does unlock a thirst or a desire to educate yourself then, because I think that I'm constantly on a continuous improvement journey. I'm very curious, I'm very interested in that. And when I went to the insurance broker, I remember doing my Chartered Insurance Institute exams, and they were thick as the thickest book you've ever seen, and I flew through those. And similarly, maths is not my forte, but they gave me the bookkeeping duties when I was there, as well as working on the counter and things, and again I became very adept at that. So I think the opportunity for younger people, and perhaps people who don't know or haven't particularly done well, as he says, if they've got a passion or a business can untap that, then education can come if they're given the opportunity then to do it. And I think that's a really important thing, that self-development, that again, that curiousness, that ability to learn and be supported perhaps by your business to go down whatever road it is that you might be interested in.
Yeah, and the nice thing about an apprenticeship is, so if they come into our business, the legal apprentices, they're usually in the serious injury team. Right. So they see brilliant lawyers. We have brilliant lawyers in that team, committed, kind, empathetic, hardworking. And the reward, I mean, what they do for these clients who are probably mainly badly injured is phenomenal. So I think you're right that they'll see that and go, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Like they're great role models for these young apprentices coming in. And I see them, I speak to some of the young apprentices, and they're so in awe of these brilliant people who work in the serious injury team and what they do and how they do it, that it gives them the drive to do the work. Because, when you're like 18, you might go, oh, I don't want to do these exams. Yeah. I don't want to be studying every weekend. Yeah. But then if you want to be her or him, you have to do it. And that's kind of what I thought, was that if I want more, there's no point moaning about it. I'm going to have to do the work.
Yeah.
And I did in the end. And I always say I don't know how I kept going, but you do, because I think there was that I was working and I was seeing lawyers on the job, and I was like, I want to be that. So the only way I'm going to get it, no one's going to hand it to me, is I have to do these bloody exams and do the work, and it's frustrating. And you have your down days, and you have your days when you're fed up and you want to give it up. But you just kind of pick yourself up and keep going. So I think you're right. I think, and I don't know who it was. I think it was Billie Jean King who said, if you can't see it, you don't believe you can do it.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the great thing about apprentices, because you see it. From day one, you see somebody doing what you want to do, and you think, right, I'm going to have to do the work. So
yeah, I think it's really important, and I love the point that you said as well about being able to allow people to move into different areas. We've talked a lot on this podcast about retention of talent, because when we're talking about attracting people from different backgrounds and things, that's all well and good, isn't it, if we can't retain and keep them going. And it might be that they have a bad experience in insurance or accountancy, but that doesn't mean that that's everywhere either. But they could also take those skills and go somewhere else if they're a good, loyal, committed employee. Why let them go and lose the talent if you can find another opportunity for them? And I don't think that's done enough in business. I don't know about your thoughts on that, Donna.
Yeah, no, we feel as a business, and our careers team are looking at the careers of our people, whether they're in the call center or whatever area they're in, and all of our jobs, all of our promotions are internally advertised first. And we will always try and grow our own. And we'll always try, and if we see ambition in people, early on, we'll try and, tap into that and make sure that we talk to them about, you don't have to stay there. Something will come up, or, we have academy. So if you want to go into the academy, if you're in the call center and you want to become a claims handler, you can do that. If you want to go in the legal academy, you don't necessarily have to be a lawyer to do some legal work. You can be a claims handler with some legal work, or, if you then want to be a lawyer. But I think you're right. And I think I think the other bit for me is flexibility. And I think we have got that right. I mean, not perfectly, because you never get it perfect. But I think over the years, I look and I see that we've been very flexible with people in terms of, flexible working, job shares, part-time. And I think a lot of women have taken that up, and they've kind of worked with us, had their children, had their families, and now they're kind of like, children are at school or they're growing up, and they're like, here I go, this is my time, this is my career. And you get tremendous loyalty. I mean, we have people in the business who've been with us more than 20 years. I call them the lifers. Yeah. Because, kind of feel like, if you give 20 years of your life, then, it's amazing. But I think the reason they're there is, one, obviously they must like their job and they have job satisfaction, and that's important. But I think it's loyalty as well, where, we've kind of given to them and then they're giving back to us, and they're part of the team. And it's, any success we have is very much a team effort across the business. So I think it's, it's great. I think it's worth to look at career opportunity and career planning, but also flexibility. What do people need now? Yeah. If they're in the middle of having their family, or they have illness in the family, then you support them. And then that will come back to you in spades in terms of loyalty and commitment and stuff. And I just think it makes for a better atmosphere and a better working environment as well.
Yeah, such good points. And again, things we've touched on, because I think so much talent is certainly lost at certain parts or stages of their life. And also then they can sometimes be forgotten. So it's because for a period of years, whether it's health or family or children, they can't or aren't able to progress their career or be as ambitious as perhaps they might like. The business sort of forgets about them and says, oh, they're not interested. But it is only for that period of time, isn't it? And then they come back into the workforce, not that they've left, but they come back sort of renewed and with a new vigor and all that experience and knowledge and expertise, and then they're ready to really sort of blossom and thrive. Whereas we see so many we lose. I mean, I get so many come to me, I'm on mat leave, it's time for a move, I'm going through the menopause, it's time for a move, my mum's ill, it's time for a move. And all this talent is fantastic, and we're losing them at critical junctures because we're not offering that, what you've talked to, that flexibility and agility and awareness, I think.
And humanity.
Yes.
Business should have a big human streak running through it. When you think about it, although part of the business is technology, contracts, customers, it's people. Carpenters, is bricks and mortar is just the building. What makes everything happen, even makes the technology happen, everything that happens at Carpenters is from the people, and we're only as good as our people. So, and the problem with, the thing with people, sometimes it's a problem, sometimes it's not, is that things happen, and sometimes, they need to their time and their support, and they need to be able to say, I can't be committed at the moment, I need your support, but I'll be back. And my experience is they do come back, and they do come back with a vengeance, and they're really like determined and loyal and want to pay you back and kind of, thank you in a way. But I think that's great, and I think it really, it just is how business should be, if you think about it.
Yeah. Excellent, I agree. So as we've mentioned in the introduction, and one of the first things I saw about you was on another podcast, and it was one of the reasons why I was so drawn to connecting with you. It was that kindness is free, spread that shit everywhere. So, I mean, when did you come to that realization? Because we talk about kindness, don't we? Yet we don't see it all that often every day. So, I mean, where, you'd say, when did you come to that realization in your own life? And how can we remove that sort of thinking that perhaps being kind is being soft in business?
I've had to think about this, and it was weird because that guy said to me, what's your life motto? And I didn't even know I had a life motto, and I had to kind of think on the hoof, and I went, it has to be about kindness, because I think for me, my granny brought me up, and she was a really, really kind woman, just, I mean, you know, she just always thought of other people, and that was normal for me, and I grew up in that environment. My dad died when I was 7, and people still miss him, you know, after 50 years, and I think he was very kind, and I think some of it's DNA, thankfully. I think he always thought of other people. My granny always thought of other people, so I think that was kind of, you know, normal for me, and I was brought up that way, and I think I feel that way, and I think as I've progressed, and I think partly, you know, when you come from a basic background and you do better, you're so grateful, you know, and you're so like, you're considering other people's feelings. You're thinking, you know, I don't want you to think that I'm great, because I'm not. I'm just I'm as imperfect as the next person, but also you want to support people. And I think for me, I've got quite an outgoing personality. I'm very chatty. So chatting to people is easy for me. Going into a room full of 100 people doesn't faze me at all, you know, which is a great thing to have in your locker. But I think I like chatting. And I think I realized quite early on that people respond to you chatting to them or to kindness very positively. You know, if you even go into a shop to buy something and you're quite chatty with the person on the desk, difference in their demeanor when you're like that, you know, it's like it's almost like it doesn't take much to make people feel better or to be happier, you know. And I think so I kind of, that thing about spreading it around, and it really is free. I think the stuff you can do if you've got money, and the stuff you can donate and fundraise and all that, and I love all that stuff, but you know, just a basic kindness, hello, how are you, that kind of thing is really important. So I think it's in me, and I think I realized that the response to it is very good, and you know something, it really makes you feel better. You have a much better day if you try. And listen, I'm not always kind, and I can be very fiery and, you know, impatient. I have a lot of really bad traits, but I think I realized that if you have a day where you're trying to be kind, or you do try and consider other people, it's a much happier day than if you're going around being mean to people. I don't understand meanness. I think life's too short. So I hope, I think I'm very lucky. I think if you're brought up in a kind environment, it's very good grounding as well, isn't it?
No, I agree, and you're absolutely right. And I think the studies to say, you know, just a little bit of kindness gives you, you know, our own sense of worth and happiness, and all of that is elevated significantly. So great, thank you for sharing. So what helped you, do you think, get where you are? You know, if someone's listening to this and thinks this is great what Donna's saying, but I don't have that chance, that opportunity, what advice would you give to them then?
I suppose when I look back on, you know, getting from the secretarial course to qualifying as a lawyer and then joining a business, I mean, some of it is luck. You know, things come along. I mean, one of the things I really do say when I mentor or if I'm talking to young people is take every opportunity that comes your way. And I think I've been very good at that. I'm not very good at saying I'm very good at anything, because I always feel like, oh God, that's really showing off. I can't do that, but I must be getting better. But I do think when I look back and I thought, you know, I was very good at taking opportunity, and I would push myself out of my comfort zone. So if someone said, do you want to do this? I mean, when I emigrated to England at 20, that was quite nervous and nerve-wracking, but I took the plunge, and I thought, the other thing I've always done is I've always given myself an out. So when I went to England when I went to live in England, I got myself a return flight for a month.
Right.
You know, so I was going back in a month if I didn't like it. When I moved from Newcastle to London, I did the same. I'm going back if I don't like it. When I moved Newcastle to Merseyside, so for me, I kind of forced myself to do it and tell myself I don't have. If it doesn't work out, I'll change it. And ironically, I've never gone back once in anything I've done. It's always. But I think when I say it worked out, I think I'm quite determined to make it work. I mean, unless it was really awful, I think I kind of go, there is a point where this has to settle down. It's not going to be great straight away. And I'm going to have to, you know, I was homesick for 3 years when I moved to England, really homesick. But then it went at 3 years, and then I was all right, and then I settled down. So I think you have to kind of work through the pain, and I think you have to take chances. I think you have to, I think sometimes I wasn't really probably qualified, or I didn't know enough to be doing what I was doing, but I kind of winged it. And sometimes I think women are the worst at this, I have to say, in my experience. I think men will wing it. Like if they see a job and they can do 60% of it, they'll apply for it. A woman wants to be 100% sure she can do it, because we're perfectionists and we're very tough on ourselves. So I think I probably didn't do the 100%. I probably went at about 70%. Not as low as men, but so I think for me, you know, if someone's sitting out there age 16 in an overcrowded class, I go, take chances. You know, push yourself out of your comfort zone. I mean, if you want it, you know, I clearly did want it, and I clearly had some ambition, despite none of it ever being instilled in me. It was naturally there, and I think, so I think, you know, things don't get handed to you, really. You have to go out there. You've got to kind of, you know, grab your opportunities, and then, you know, a bit of luck comes along as well. Sometimes, you know, someone just asks you to do something and you think, my God, that's such a great break. I'm going to take that. And you meet someone who just likes you or supports you. And so there's like a bit of the graft, bit of luck. And I'm sorry, but that old hard work thing, you know, which is really boring. And when I see young people, I see their eyes glaze over when they get to the hard work bit. But I have worked hard, you know, like I have had a lot of fun as well, by the way, but I've always put the graft in, because I just don't think there's any way around that.
So true. And I think the other thing that I would add to what you've said, which I absolutely agree with, is tell people what you want as well, because I think too often we don't articulate or communicate what we're interested in to too many people. And especially, you know, I've spoke to some leaders, even really successful people, but they sort of wait for something to come, so everyone's going to know that I'm looking for this, and yet there are other people banging on the door saying, when can I want this, you know, do you know, how can I get to this? And they're creating those opportunities for themselves, whereas when you're waiting for them, sometimes that they do come, as you quite rightly say, but I think we can create more as well, and by tapping into network and finding that trusted person or mentor or whatever as well. You just don't know how important or valuable mentioning or saying something to someone might actually be for you.
Another motto I have, which I don't say too often because it's not it's a tough one, but I believe it and I kind of live by it, is you only get out of life what you put into it. You know, and I know some people can't put it in for some reason or other, or they don't have, maybe weren't born with the drive or the determination, but, you know, sometimes I have people moaning, well, look at you, you're so lucky. You know, this happened and that happened, and I go, I worked really hard, you know, and I kind of put myself out there, and you know, I took chances. So I do, you know, sometimes if people say, oh, why didn't that happen for me? And the problem is it doesn't just happen. A lot of stuff just doesn't happen. You have to go out there and, you know, kind of push. You're right. And I think, again, we're especially if you come from a basic background, we're not used to being pushy. We're used to just accepting what we have and being thankful and whatever. And we're like, you know, oh, they have that over there. We don't get that. But it's like, why? You know, maybe we should get it. And I think that's why it's so important, if we do get it, or we do get some success or a voice, that we look after those people who are sitting there desperate for a chance and desperate to come out and try things, and we give them that chance, because it is a bit harder if it's not handed to you, or you're not in a place where, you know, it's normal and there's a lot of ambition around. Well, that's, you know, that's kind of, but when you're in a place where there's no ambition and not much support, that's when you really need it, especially if you want it and you don't know where to go. So that's why mentoring is brilliant.
Yeah, fantastic. So is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or add today, Donna?
Not really. I mean, you've asked me some really good questions, and I've done a few podcasts, and I always worry that everyone's going to be sick listening to me and I'm going to be saying the same thing over again. But this was a bit different, and I quite like it, because, you know, because of what you do, you look at it from a certain angle, and I think it is interesting, I think, to look at some of those things about, you know, how do we achieve stuff? How do we help people like us, you know, have that opportunity, take the opportunity, because we're not just saying about it being there, it's about how do you take it and how do you make sure that you go for it. And I think it's great. And I think the thing for me really is that, you know, society will be a lot fairer when there's better representation.
Mm.
You know, because if everybody is the same and has had a really easy run and everything's been handed to them, I just don't think that's really what real life is like. And I think, you know, we're never going to get out of the situations that we're in without opportunity and without that kind of determination. So, yeah, I mean, I love to see, you know, I mean, I did another podcast at a youth club recently.
Yeah.
And I love that place because it gives people hope, you know, and it's teaching them skills that you wouldn't normally learn from a difficult background and everything. So I just think, you know, everything we can do to support people to find their voice, to find their drive and their ambition is really important. So I just think, that's definitely high on my list.
Yeah, definitely. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your thoughts and sort of thinking, because I think there's loads of really great stuff in here. And of course, obviously I'll share all the links to the groups that you support, the communities, the charities, and if anyone's interested in those, obviously, are you happy for people to reach out to you as well, Donna, to learn a little more? If there's anything in here, I'm sure someone in your team will be able to help them, will they?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, I'm on social media. I'm quite vocal. I love a soapbox, me. I'm a campaigner by nature. I think I am my dad. I think he'll never be gone with me here. But I think definitely, you know, there's no point in me saying I want to support people if I don't reply to them and respond to them. I do. And I love it. And I think it's really interesting. I love young people. I think young women in particular at the moment that I meet through the Girls Network, really, I see a great future. You know, I see young women who are not taking no for an answer, who are not going to be treated as second-class citizens, who are determined that we're going to have better equality and that, you know, men and women will support each other more and will share childcare and will share everything. And I just think so exciting. It really is, you know, and I think because I'm old and I think, God, I put up with some stuff over the years, you know, that I thought was just normal and I had to deal with it. And they're going, oh, no. So brilliant, isn't it? And I think it'd be very interesting to see how that unfolds.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, the best thing that we can do is leave a better future behind us, or for us, the people that are coming behind us, really. So for sure. So again, Donna, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.